Well, hello there. Welcome to the online version of CMIS424. Just to catch up from Labor Day weekend 2019, let's kick it off with our theme music.
The cool thing about IT auditing controls CMIS424, it's got sexy stuff.
Sexy stuff like governance frameworks, governance controls. We're going to be talking about the sexy stuff today. So this is the video version. We'll talk about homework and just a reminder of things we've talked about in Chapter 1 and then dive right into Chapter 2 together. Really, there are three big areas in Chapter 2 in the Hall textbook that are worth covering. Organizational structure, which is totally auditable. In fact, changes the way the organizational structure can change the way you audit policies and procedures and controls. Computer center operations, let's just call it the data center, and then DR planning. And we'll wrap up with some IT outsourcing and cloud issues and how they affect the audit function. So there we go. By the way, in case you're wondering where I am, I'm deep in the bowels of Fort Jax downstairs. So yeah, it's all glamorous down here. Anyway, your homework, your mission, should you choose to accept it. Screwed that up. Definitely finish Chapter 2 if you haven't finished reading Chapter 2 before we get together next time. And in class, we're going to do the audit. Assignment 2, I'm going to post on Blackboard. That'll be the results of your audit that we do in class. And I'll be posting some reading assignments on Blackboard. So it's not in your textbook. These are some additional readings for you, or supplementary readings for you. So the first thing we'll do in class when we get together is the actual audit, because I have a limited number of these Eclipse sunglasses in our sample. You'll have to work with a partner. Two groups might actually have 3 partners. We'll see how that works out. I am curious. You might want to think about this. You'll definitely want to bring your audit procedure with you to class to conduct. And I'm wondering if your procedure assumes that you'll have access to everything that you need to have access to, because a good auditor is always prepared and has everything ready to go for the audit. So to simulate that, how to be prepared appropriately for an audit, we're just going to artificially give you a 5-minute time limit. So you'll have to hurry. So you have to have everything ready to go. You can't be looking stuff up. And I'll explain more in class. Oh, a couple of quick topics. You know, the ISACA social event that was Sunday evening. Nobody reached out to me to say that they wanted to go, so I'm assuming none of you went. I begged off of it as well because I was tired of painting the back porch all day, and I was exhausted, so I begged off of it too. So no harm, no foul, no bonus points for anybody in this case, but maybe I didn't do a good job of explaining how important ISACA membership is if you're wanting to get into this area. Another thing that, and there'll be other opportunities, I think, for other ISACA events, but this one was free for you. The other interesting interaction I had was with a student's mother who happens to be a certified fraud examiner. So remember, we talked about that in Chapter 1, and I erroneously said that, oh, this is kind of a more advanced career step. You need a lot of training and experience to become a certified fraud examiner to make that kind of money. Turns out I'm wrong. So according to the certified fraud examiner, the requirements, and they hire entry-level people all the time, the requirements are 6 credit hours of accounting. That's 2 classes. You've already had 2 classes in accounting. You're ready. And especially with this class under your belt, you'd be ready to apply for a position like that. And this is something that interests you. She said there's a lot of travel involved, but for some of you that might be kind of exciting. She does assessments of very large banks, and so she's got a regular number of banks that she just rotates around all the time. But she did mention the possibility of making $50,000 to $75,000 straight out of college if you're willing to get into fraud assessment, fraud examination. So I'm just passing that on as another career option for you. She shared a lot of great stories. I can't share all of them right now in this video. Maybe some of them will come up in class at a future date. Obviously I can't call on you in this video version, but just a recap of some of the things you should be comfortable answering from Chapter 1 as you get ready for the exam, which will be coming up in a couple of weeks. Just some reminder review questions, but yes, I'll post a study guide for you to look at prior to the exam. Now, in Chapter 1, we introduced the idea of this COSO framework. And remember, we use the COSO framework in order to stay compliant with SOX federal regulations so we don't go to jail for financial misrepresentation. So this picture is the COSO model in particular. There are some good parts and bad parts to the COSO model that I'll point out. Notice IT up here. We just get two little categories of controls. There are a lot of physical controls. We'll talk about segregation of duties today, for example. But this is the COSO model. It's good in that it's simple and it's fairly straightforward. So we're ready to do a deeper dive into what COSO is all about and how we might conduct an audit against the COSO framework. So first we'll have to talk about what the hell governance even means, what it's all about while we're talking about that in class, because it's critically important. The organizational structure of the IT function is important. The types of controls in a data center, the disaster recovery plan, those are the big three, and then we're going to wrap up with, like I said, IT outsourcing. All right, let's start with the definition. I like the ISACA definitions. Just in the professional world, ISACA definitions are much more commonplace than the definitions you're getting in the Hall textbook, which are very focused on financial governance. But we're talking more broadly about governance across the organization and then IT governance. So ISACA's definition focus on meeting stakeholder needs. I love that part. Agreeing on our enterprise objectives, just at a very high level, the mission of organization, what the organization is trying to accomplish at a very high level, and then figuring out how we're going to get there, how we're going to achieve those objectives by making some tough decisions about priorities, because we can't do everything, so we have to pick and choose, and then monitoring, measuring how successful we are. And a great way to monitor how well we're doing as an organization is to conduct periodic audits, and this is where you come in. Now, I don't want you to get confused on the difference in governance and management, because a lot of this may sound like Management 101 from another class, or 331. But there is a difference. Governance is at a much higher level. Governance establishes the ground rules for how you're going to manage, how you're going to lead the organization. But governance are the rules you're going to abide by in order to govern, regulate, manage the organization. So governance is at a higher level. Keep that in mind. Now, what we really care about is IT governance. Just within the CMIS course of study, IT governance is what we want to focus on, and it's just a subset. So same definition as overarching governance, just applied to the IT function or department, if you will. So a subset of corporate governance. In order to reduce risk, ensure investment in IT resources, add value to the corporation. That's the purpose of everything, is to add value to our customers and all of our stakeholders. In class, I typically do an exercise where I have you think about all the stakeholders in SIUE. And students typically talk about, well, students are stakeholders, and then they think of faculty and staff and administrative folks. And then if I get them to think more broadly, who else are stakeholders? And then they, well, parents, employers, because SIUE is a talent pool for jobs in the St. Louis area. Local hospitals and healthcare are stakeholders. The community broadly, businesses in the community want SIUE to be successful because they make money off of us. Local government, police, fire department, rescue services. Think very broadly when you think about stakeholders. It's more than just end users, although we tend to forget end users when we're talking about IT governance. So we want to be very inclusive. So it's not just the IT department that we're looking at. Everybody that has a vested interest in the success of IT for the overall mission of the organization is a stakeholder, which is basically everybody. Now, COSO, the COSO framework, for better or for worse, outlines only three IT governance areas. I would put it to you that there are more than these three, but I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. For COSO, there are three, and hence for SOX, there are three areas that SOX regulation cares about. Number one, org structure of the IT function. Number two, data center operations. Number three, disaster recovery planning. We do a lot more than this in IT, but let's start with these three. It's a starting point. So how might an organization potentially structure its IT function? Well, there are a couple of obvious ways. Number one, centralize everything. Everything's centralized at the corporate facility, and even though an organization has multiple locations, all of the IT stuff is centralized at one location. So, for example, Lowe's is potentially an example of this. Lowe's Home Improvement, where I worked for a while, where all of the IT functions, it's not like each Lowe's store had its own IT person. There were IT resources, there was technology in every store, but the people and the management of IT was all centralized at the corporate location in North Carolina. So that's one example of a centralized model. It's kind of comes out of mainframes in the 60s that were highly centralized. So this would probably be the original organizational structure, to centralize everything. Then your textbook has a quick and dirty picture of what this looks like, and mentions the idea of charging back for services. So IT is a service provider, and they're charging back to every other department because other departments don't have their own IT function or IT support. And just a typical organizational chart. This is nobody in particular. This is just an example of the IT function, everybody reporting up through a CIO to the CEO. So this would be, centralized through one functional area. One of the things that COSO and SOX, but in this example COSO, is very particular about is segregation of duties. So this is especially a problem if you have a centralized organizational structure. So everything is centralized in one place. You can't have the same people doing and approving their own work. There has to be some kind of segregation of duties so that there are checks and balances. It's less likely to have fraud if you have segregation of duties. So certain duties within the IT function are called incompatible. They just, by their very nature, they have to be kept separate. The obvious accounting example is the people that are placing purchase orders for new equipment cannot be the same people that are approving the invoices to be paid. Again, because of the opportunity for fraud. So these have to be different people and in fact, different departments. So within IT, the examples are things like the people who develop new systems and the people who support those systems. So system development and operations. Database administration, for some reason, gets called out in the COSO model as needing to be separate from other groups. And then new systems development should be separate from maintenance. Now, maintenance and operations are very similar. Supporting day-to-day operations versus maintenance is kind of break-fix work. A lot of times operations and maintenance are combined in an organization. But COSO is very clear that these need to be separated, really just to keep damn programmers from testing in production. Now, if you work in IT, you're going to cringe when I say that. You should never, ever test in production. But a lot of coders want to get all, excited about their new code, and they want to go ahead and roll it out without testing it properly and without giving the operations team a heads up that they've made a change. They'll just immediately make the change. So you have to keep them. The way you segregate duties is by keeping your programmers away from the production environment. Don't even give them any access at all to the production environment. They can only access the development environment and the test environment, and that's it. Operations supports the production environment, and that is a sacred space that just can't change without the right level of approvals. There is a problem with this. Those of you that have heard the term DevOps, which is it's very trendy right now, merging development and operations. From a management aspect, I get this, and I understand why there are some cost benefits to merging these roles. But I'm telling you right now, from an auditing perspective, this is a big old no-no. Companies seem to be doing it anyway. I don't want to overcomplicate things. Just kind of be aware in the back of your head that this is going to be more of an issue going into the future. So maybe you're thinking, oh, well, if centralized is a problem, wouldn't it be easier to segregate duties just by spreading the teams out among all your locations and just really distributing things so that, your location has an IT function, you take care of your stuff. Your location has an IT function, you take care of your stuff. The COSO model calls this the distributed model. I think it's easier to call this the decentralized model. Everything is completely decentralized. Nothing is centralized at all. This is not the best picture of a decentralized model, but I think it's trying to show you that one possibility where each functional area, production, marketing, accounting, finance, maybe they're completely independent and they have separate information systems. They're not they don't have a shared database. They don't have a shared ERP, enterprise resource planning system at all, like SAP or Oracle. Everything is completely separated, which from a segregation of duties aspect is great. From a practical aspect, there are a lot of downsides. So the downside or the risk associated with a fully decentralized model is just a complete lack of efficiency that centralization would give you. Hardware and software incompatibility is a soapbox of mine because at Corning I was responsible for standards across every location, and a lack of standards can lead to operational inefficiencies. If you're a big proponent of the decentralized model, you might, like you work at one of the other locations, you might argue that, well, it gives us more flexibility, more agility to respond to changing business requirements and do what we need to do to provide value to our customers. Maybe, but probably not. There are a lot of other issues with a decentralized model. Just from my own experience, it's a lot cheaper to have 10 people at one central location than to have 3 IT people at 10 different locations by 3 to 1. Paying salary for 30 people as opposed to 10 people that could do the job just as well. If everybody's kind of buying their own hardware, that gets very costly trying to maintain standards for a lot of different, well, if you've ever imaged a PC or a laptop, the time it takes to create a nice solid image for, like a Windows image, for example, for a PC, takes a lot of time. Now, if I have to come up with a separate Windows image because your location is using Windows 7, another one is using Windows 10, and another is, oh my God, using Windows XP, could be, with different flavors and different software applications. That's a lot of time investment into testing all those different images every time you roll out a new piece of software. So the more you can standardize and limit the number of software packages and even hardware that you're using out across your organization, well, that's going to be real savings. And then, of course, if you can standardize on hardware, everybody's getting the same laptops, for example, you're going to save money because you're going to get a much better discount from the supplier. That's just always true with hardware and software. And so my argument with executive leadership was always about saving money, not that I wanted to be a control freak and centralize as much as possible so that I could be in control of everything, which is what I wanted, but because there's cost savings involved and more efficiencies involved. So that's the business argument you can make. Sorry about that pop-up window. There is a third option for an organizational structure, which Hall does not get into, but this is very popular, so we need to talk about it. And that is the federated model, which we will talk about in part 2 of this video.